World. I'm your host, Gary Davis. The Newtown Action Alliance is a grassroots action-based organization that is working tirelessly to lead and effect meaningful legislative change to reduce gun violence, among other objectives, to ensure that what happened in Newtown never happens again. With me today are David Stowe, Vice Chairman of Newtown Action Alliance, and Monte Frank, a board member and legal advisor, as well as the organizer of Team 26.
That's right.
So glad you guys are here. I know you've been busy. You were just doing something this morning, and let's just jump right into it. And I really want to focus initially on Team 26 and this fabulous ride on Washington, D.C. So Monte, I know you were the brains behind that. Tell us a little bit about how successful that was and what you encountered along the way.
Well, it ended up being a tremendously successful event. We essentially had a 4-day, 400-mile rally. It was a rolling rally from here to D.C. We had a really nice send-off from Newtown. We rode from Newtown to Ridgefield. That was the first 26 miles, coincidentally. Chris McDonald joined us for that first 26 miles, as did Congressman Himes and Matt Knickerbocker from Bethel. We then had another event in Ridgefield. From there, we huffed it over to New Jersey, where we spent the night. And then the next day, we had 3 events in New Jersey, all different, small cities. And then the third day, we ended up in Baltimore, which to me was the real pinnacle of the event. And then finally, we ended up in D.C. on Tuesday. But what was amazing is the support that we received, not just in Newtown, but from Americans between here and D.C. Guys in pickup trucks rolling up alongside you. And you know, as a cyclist, when somebody rolls up on a pickup truck, you're not expecting to get a compliment.
Right.
So people were very complimentary. You know, we saw you on the news this morning. Thank you for what you're doing. We support you. You know, let's get it done.
Well, we got some photos of the ride, and it
great.
was you know, quite a ride because there were long stretches. It's you know, not easy to be biking long distances, even though you're in shape, and I'm sure most of your team. You actually had some interesting team members.
We did.
That made up the 26, which represents the 26 people who died at Sandy Hook. So tell us a little bit about the composition of your team.
So there were 4 of us. I'm sorry, there were 5 of us from Newtown. And 2 of us, who, including me, who live in Sandy Hook, had kids who went through the Sandy Hook school. But we had a Vietnam veteran who, you know, was a lieutenant, fired an M16 in Vietnam, which is the same caliber weapon as the AR-15. He was my daughter's guest at the Sandy Hook School Veterans Day breakfast for 3 years, including the year that my daughter had Vicky Soto as a teacher. That was her first year in the school. We had a Newtown police officer. We had a guy from Maine who was a member of the NRA who feels strongly that the NRA no longer speaks for him. We had a rider from Rhode Island. We had a rider from New York who actually was sitting in a classroom when his classroom in college was shot at. And fortunately, the only fatality that day was the shooter who killed himself. And that's another part of the gun violence problem, is the rate of suicides. Right. It's you know, there are so many different stories that got linked together, both the riders and the people we met. Riding into D.C. with Omar Samaha and the Virginia Tech cycling team was just, you know, joining those communities, talking with Omar, whose sister was killed in French class at Virginia Tech. You know, those are bonds that we as Newtowners feel very strongly about, you know, connecting with other communities that have also suffered through these unspeakable tragedies. Because it's the bonds, it's working together that's really going to make the difference.
Right. Well, it's a recognition that it's a national problem. It's not just a Newtown problem. Something happened here, but it's been happening all across the country, and it's affecting everybody across the United States. And I imagine with that type of a diverse group of people, you know, taking this grueling bike ride, I know you're all in shape, but still, it's a grueling bike ride.
It's early March, too.
Right? It's not that warm out. I was there at the rally. It wasn't all that warm. And
10 inches of snow the night before.
Yeah, and you guys are out there. I mean, the reaction should have been very visceral to the members of Congress who you met and others. And what was the reaction like?
Well, when we arrived at the Capitol, we were greeted by Senator Blumenthal, who's been a tremendous supporter of our cause, Senator Murphy, too, Congresswoman Esty, who from the beginning really lent herself and her office to our cause in helping us get permits and so forth. Congresswoman DeLauro has also been a tremendous supporter. The rest of the Connecticut delegation was there. Mike Thompson, who from California, but he's the chair of the House's Gun Violence Task Force. He greeted us. Congressman Lowenthal from California, freshman congressman from an area in California where gun violence occurs often, felt very strong about this issue, wanted to support us. He was out there. Unfortunately, the day we arrived, it was a Tuesday, so a lot of the representatives were not back in town, and the weather was horrible. But I think we would have had a much larger turnout. But in talking with Congresswoman Esty, she's so proud of what we did and her office's support for us, and the reaction that she has received from her colleagues in Congress about the ride, about how Newtowners and others are really, really pushing hard for some reform and are not going away. And I think that helps her, and I think it also helps the other members of Congress who really want to get something done and are just concerned about the political realities, that our efforts, Newtown Action Alliance efforts, our voices are being heard and I think are spurring people to action.
Well, and your bike ride then was preceding another big visit of Newtown Action Alliance supporters to Washington. Let's talk a little bit about that and the type of reception. You've been there before. We talked about it the last time you were on the show.
Yeah.
Are you making some inroads with some of these folks? Are they starting to get the message? Because, Congress is infamous for dragging its feet. So what do you think, second time around, big trip, what was the reaction? Do you think, did you feel like you were starting to get your message heard beyond the core supporters?
Well, unfortunately, I wasn't able to go, but I played a big part in planning it.
Sure.
But from Monte was actually there. But from everyone that did go, what they did say is that their stories and their unpolished and just personal stories had a much greater impact. And they were told that by the congressmen and the senators that, those stories have a much greater impact than some polished lobbyist, that it's obvious what their agenda is there. We went down, there's no agenda. I mean, this tragedy befell our town. We weren't waiting for something to happen so that we could, that when I hear that, it's actually insulting and a little disturbing that people actually say that you're taking advantage of the situation to push your agenda. There was no agenda. On December 14th, I woke up, sent my kids off to school, and then this happened. And then that day, I promised myself I was going to do whatever I could to make the world a safer place for my kids. That's my agenda, to make sure that my kids grow up in a safe environment. I have absolutely nothing against guns. I fully support the Second Amendment, but all these things, all with rights come responsibilities, and there are reasonable restrictions as well.
Well, I think too, with more information coming out about what happened that day and Adam Lanza's activities, I mean, if what we read was correct, I mean, there was a gun locker in the house. Guess what? He had access to it.
It was in his room.
The guns were legally purchased. Guess what? He still got access to them. And the problem that I find in this argument is that I just can't find any way you can convince someone it's a necessity to have an assault rifle and high-capacity magazines in your home. I'm waiting to hear that answer because I haven't heard it yet, and it just astounds me that they keep trying to bring this up as a self-defense issue. How are you even going to get a gun like that and go out and do it? It's not for that purpose. But I don't mean to get on a soapbox. I know we're all in the same position here. So you went in there, you talked to a lot of important people, you attended hearings, your presence was felt. So you guys have been doing a fabulous job working with a lot of other organizations now to make inroads both at the federal and state level here in Connecticut. We've got some decisions coming up soon. Where do you think things are going? Do you feel that the effort that's being put forth for all the reasons you stated, David, why you're involved. I know it's why most of the group is involved. Are we going to see some progress made?
I think so. You know, I was actually down in D.C. with the Newtown Action Alliance group. David was quarterbacking it from here. I mean, literally, we'd be on the phone, and David would be setting up the meetings because there were certain key people that we wanted to see. And you know, we'd get the emails and the text message from David saying, "All right, you've got a meeting with so and so and such a point," which was tremendous. But you know, one particular meeting we had that to me was particularly powerful was when we met with Harry Reid, and in the room were this Soto family, Neil Heslin, who's Jesse Lewis's father, and a woman whose daughter was killed in Aurora, and the courage of family members in explaining to Harry Reid what happened on December 14th and in the theater in Aurora. It was so powerful. And at one point, Harry Reid asked if he could keep a copy of the funeral card from Jesse Lewis, and Jesse Lewis's father said, "I only have one copy." And I had a copy of that card in my wallet because Jesse's mother, Scarlett, had given it to me. And I handed it to Harry Reid. He put it in his coat pocket, and that was the end of the meeting. But he wanted to take it with him because I think the personal experiences that from the family members and what they described as so powerful. And so, you know, when I look at that and I look at where we are now, you know, before December 14th, if somebody had said that the Senate is going to be debating and voting on a trafficking bill, universal background checks, and hopefully the other two key pieces, which are the high-capacity magazines and the assault weapons bill, I think people would have looked at me and said, "You're crazy. That will never happen. It's the third rail." And what we're learning now is there are going to get votes. I think those bills, two of those bills are likely to pass, that the polling data is showing not only that there is overwhelming support for those bills among Americans, but that support since Newtown has been growing. It hasn't been fading away. The polling data shows just the opposite, which means that, you know, I think there are going to be fairly significant bills coming out of the Capitol here in Hartford and out of D.C. that will make a difference, that will save lives, will reduce gun violence, both in our cities, where it's an incredible problem, and in our towns.
Well, and it's interesting because I know that you guys have been a bit more pragmatic than some in the sense of, you know, everything should be on the table for discussion. I know the focus right now has been on gun violence, but mental health, you have a broader agenda than just this. But at the same time, I think you've said many times that, you know, it's all incremental, and whatever happens now is going to lead us to the next step. And if it all happens at once, fantastic. If it doesn't all happen at once, that doesn't mean it's over.
Right.
Because I think people are in it for the long haul now in a much different way than they were before. Is that the kind of the feeling you're getting from the groups you're working with and just within your own organization?
Well, I think what was the case is there were a lot of these groups that were out there, and they were kind of like just working in the wilderness by themselves. And then this event has galvanized a lot of people to both bring support to existing organizations and then to spur the birth of organizations like Newtown Action Alliance and Team 26 and a lot of other groups that have formed. And we're forming alliances with all these groups on a national level and on a state level. I mean, we were just in Hartford at a rally today, and we were with Connecticut Against Gun Violence. We were with March for Change. And most importantly, we were with the victims and families of people who've died in the inner cities in Hartford and in New Haven and Bridgeport. And it's very important to remember that what happened here is an anomaly. You know, it's a horrific, tragic thing that's changed our town forever. But we need to use that to lend a voice to these people who never had a voice. I mean, these people and their children were being killed, and nobody was taking notice.
Right. Which is why when we were in Baltimore with Team 26, we got such a wonderful reception by Mayor Rawlings Blake, because, you know, we have a voice, And we need to stand united with Hartford and Baltimore and Detroit and Washington, D.C., and together solve the gun epidemic problem that we're facing.
Well, getting back to your earlier point, Monte, things continue to build. You might see something on the national news that indicates otherwise, but here at home even we're seeing it. I mean, we are home to the National Shooting Sports Foundation.
Right.
It's been quietly in town for many, many years as NSF. Everybody thought it was like some kind of a company in an office building. And suddenly we found out this group is here, and it's been amazing, the reaction. And in fact, people were just picketing. It's the second time out there. I think we've got some photos of the crowd out there in front of NSF. I know you guys were there.
That was Thursday.
And just amazing that we've had this kind of turnout and focus. And, and the media coverage was still there. I mean, there are other places where it's been waning, but boy, when they found out something's happening in Newtown with a gun organization, they're lined up, ready to talk about it. So it still has legs as an issue, and.
But I think what's important, is that we get the votes. We're gonna have a fairly strong gun bill that's going to come out of Hartford, hopefully this week.
And hopefully it'll be the strongest one in the nation and can act as a leader for the rest of the nation.
But then, then that will springboard into action in D.C. Our senators and congressmen are committed to working to get a vote. And I think at that point, hopefully some of it will pass. But if it doesn't pass, if there are senators who are not going to vote for an assault weapons ban, who are not going to vote for limits on high-capacity clips, then we need to know who they are. There needs to be an up or down vote on it so that when they come up for re-election, when Newtown Action Alliance puts forth its, our 50-state strategy, that people know where their representatives, their elected officials voted.
Absolutely, you can't be
not the rhetoric, where they voted.
You can't be hiding behind the filibuster. If you disagree with a point of view, I fully respect that, but argue it on its merits on the floor of the Senate. Don't be hiding behind a filibuster and avoid talking about the facts.
Well, be courageous enough to say where you stand.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's all anybody's asking. Whether you agree or don't agree, at least state your position and vote on it and be done. And I find that's interesting. You just launched the Junior National Action Alliance. Kids in high school here in Newtown are starting to spearhead that. They were working on a PSA to make an announcement, the same kind of thing. We demand a vote. Let's get a vote. The time for action is now. And so, you guys are expanding. I mean, you're expanding, with teenagers who want to become involved. You're expanding in other ways. There's a Peace Jam event, I think, that these kids, talk a little bit about that.
Well, ultimately, as our mission statement says, we want to affect change through legislative or any other means. So we know that just passing new laws by themselves is not the answer to the problem. It's a part of it, just as mental health is. But ultimately, what's really going to make a difference is a change in our culture, and really that happens with kids. I mean, you, I, Monte, we're probably fairly set in our ways. I mean, we can be influenced, but our children are the ones that are going to be the leaders of our future and the ones who really are going to make a difference in our culture. So to that end, we started the Junior Alliance, and what we're doing with them is we're supporting them in any way we can. We're giving them some direction, but we want them to make their own decisions. We want them to act on whatever programs it is that they want to be involved in. So the first thing that they took up was Peace Jam, and what Peace Jam is, it's an annual event. This year it's at UConn up at Stowe's, and what it is, it gives an opportunity for student leaders in their communities to meet with Nobel Peace Laureates and learn about how they can be leaders in their communities and affect change through action. And we're really excited to give our kids that opportunity. And also have an opportunity to bring their voices to their peers in the region.
Right. So that's great. A lot of things are happening. What's coming up in the near future for the Alliance, for Team 26? What's the game plan coming out of some of the legislative news we expect to hear fairly soon?
Well, I mean, Team 26. A couple of us rode this morning from Sandy Hook up to Hartford for the Mothers United Against Violence March. I spoke in front of the Capitol at that event. We're going to continue to do things of that nature on a more localized basis, and then we're working on a program that with Newtown Action Alliance and our 50-state strategy of it's essentially a grassroots cycling program that will allow people from all over the country to ride 26, 52, 100 miles as part of spokes that are coming out of DC, and in the same time commit to meeting with their elected officials, dispersing Newtown Action Alliance materials.
So how will this 50-state strategy be coordinated? Is it something to expect over the next couple of months, or is it a longer-term strategy?
Well, this program will be over the next couple months. And then next year we're going to do another ride on Washington, unless they pass all the legislation rendering it unnecessary, which...
Well, then you're on to mental health and other issues.
Of course. And what we are looking to do with that program is during one of the days of the ride, there will be regional rides in other parts of the country. So there'll be Sandy Hook Ride on Washington, Vegas, and it'll be a one-day event. Again, trying to broaden the ride for not just Sandy Hook to Washington, but throughout the country.
Right. Well, again, a leadership role to expand out to get everybody involved.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's going to take everybody across this country to make some of these things happen.
And that's why it is happening, because this issue has become the grassroots issue that our country's dealing with. Gun violence doesn't care you're rich or poor. It doesn't care what your race is. It doesn't care about anything. It just occurs in our cities and our towns. And it's an American problem, and we need to stand united. And I think that's why there's so much grassroots appeal and participation.
So anything from the Alliance standpoint, David, that people should be looking for and to get engaged, because that's what you want, more people to be engaged.
At our last meeting, basically what we did is we, aside from having a guest speaker from Mayors Against Gun Violence, which was very educational, what we did is we had each of our committee chairs talk about what each committee was doing, because we want more people to be engaged, and then we had kind of breakout sessions afterwards where they learned in depth what we were doing and how they could lend their skills and their talents, because we want people to be engaged, but we want them to do so in a way that they want to, we don't want to tell someone, this is what we need you to do.
Right.
We want to say, these are the 10 things that need to get done. What do you think you would like to help us with?
Right. And a great place for information is you go to Facebook. I know it's not only about the Alliance, but all the other things that are happening around the country that are consistent with what you're trying to accomplish.
Yep.
And I take it that if people want to know for the next meeting or other ways to get involved, they can go to the newtownaction.org website, which is
and the Facebook page as well.
Facebook page, a lot of great information.
Yeah, and on the website you can actually sign up with for a newsletter. So we send out probably right now about weekly newsletters.
Yeah, it's a great newsletter.
To let you know what's happening, what's coming up. And also you can go there. We actually just started, we have Team 26 t-shirts. You can go there to get your Team 26 t-shirt. And then everything we're doing also obviously requires some funding to send, whether it's to send buses to different events or just to handle the logistics of it. So anyone that feels like they want to help by donating, we have a donating page there as well.
A lot of ways to participate and help the cause and make a difference in this country.
The Facebook page for Newtown Action Alliance is facebook.com/Newtown Action. Right. And if I could, the Team 26 Facebook page is facebook.com/Sandy Hook Ride on Washington.
Great.
One word.
Facebook.com/Sandy Hook Ride on Washington.
Yes.
Perfect. All right, well, guys, thank you for being here. I know you're extremely busy, so I appreciate you taking time to be on the show.
Well, thank you for having us.
If you are interested in learning more about the Newtown Action Alliance, and you should be, you can check out the organization's page on Facebook or on its website at newtownaction.org or at facebook.com/Sandy Hook Ride to Washington for Team 26.
Ride on Washington.
Ride on Washington. We'll get that straight. That's okay. I want to thank our crew, George, Tony, Kim, and our director, Neil, and thank you for taking time to watch Newtown's World. I'm your host, Gary Davis. Until next time, live life well.